Hey bosses, wanting to tell you about a way you can connect with other Travel Like a Boss podcast listeners, talk about travel, online business, and discuss previous episodes as well as suggest future guests. Join our Facebook group, Travel Bosses, by going to facebook.com and searching for Travel Like a Boss podcast, clicking like, and clicking join group. Join our Digital Nomad Travel Bosses group today.
Welcome to the Travel Like a Boss podcast, where we interview location-independent entrepreneurs that travel the world like a boss by being their own boss. Here's your host, Johnny FD.
Hey bosses, this is Johnny, and welcome to episode 252 of the Travel Like a Boss podcast. I'm here in Sri Lanka. I'm with Daniel Rose. He is in Austin, Texas. We're both shirtless. How you doing?
Man, thank you for having me on, and great to do the shirtless podcast.
Yeah, dude, this is fun, man. So I haven't talked to you. So if you guys don't know who Dan is, he's probably most famous for being the co-founder and CEO of Six Pack Shortcuts, which turned into sixpackabs.com. But I've known Dan for a while now, and I haven't spoken to you or talked to you really since SPS got really big. But let's go all the way back. Do you remember actually how we met?
Man, it was it was through the pickup artist community somehow, and then I remember, I remember one of the first things we did was when you were running the PUA summit, and we went out to there. And I remember when I wrote that book, Sex God Method. This is going way back, but back when I wrote the book Sex God Method back in college. I wrote a book, for people who don't understand what we're talking about, I wrote a book about sex back in college. I worked with Johnny briefly on some minor affiliate marketing projects back then. And then I believe I went to your seminar after that, right?
Yeah, so this is crazy because this was so long ago. I mean, this was literally, what year was that? Like 2000, 2002 or something? It was a long time. Maybe 2005. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
It's like 20 years ago. And both you and I are very different people now. So please everyone listening, don't judge us for, the cheesy shit we said. When we were young, we were learning, we were growing. And big part of that was learning these skills of getting people together, being able to write, copy, write books, market online, and create products. And I think if it wasn't for that initial, everything that I learned from that time in that now looking back, super cheesy pickup community, I never would have learned how to create a conference. I wasn't actually the creator of it. I was helping this guy named Vince Kelvin with his. But that's how I learned how to put on, how to run a conference. And that's how I even got the name Summit. Like Summit back then. Now people call everything a summit. But back then, a summit was like the G7 summit or something with all the the world's best politicians. But he had this idea, and that's how I started the Nomad Summit. That's how I started internet marketing. And I remember specifically, I had never actually heard of affiliate marketing before you emailed me. I had just been recommending your book because it was actually a good book. And then you emailed saying, hey man, like a bunch of people said they found my book through you. Do you want me to set you up with an affiliate link so you can get credit for it? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I had no idea what that was.
Man, and I remember this actually, and maybe this was one of the things that led me to my path later on and going into YouTube. I could remember that you were at one point one of the top affiliates, and I was looking more into what you were doing, and one of the things that was driving a lot of sales was just reposting some of our videos on YouTube. And back at that time, I didn't know anything about YouTube, so it was pretty incredible. I think you were making like $1,000 or $1,500 a month just from reposting videos. So if you're listening to this at home right now, you just want to make $1,000 or $2,000 online. There's opportunities like that today that you could take advantage of.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember because I'm pretty sure. I'm sure I did that. It was like 20 years ago, and it was a wild west in YouTube. There was no content out there. Nowadays, YouTube doesn't allow that. But what you can do, and I think what's popular now, is doing like a video in screen where you can react to it, or you can you can post it and you can talk about it and put in kind of your own kind of 2 cents on it. So that's something that people can do. So yeah, there's so many opportunities now, especially with YouTube being huge. I mean, back then, YouTube was nobody was on it. It was some unheard of channel.
Yeah, right. I do remember that actually. Now thinking back on it, that when you first did that, it was like a niche little thing, but it kind of turned me on to the potential of YouTube. I didn't really do anything about it for like 5 years, but eventually, then it led to more things happening.
But I don't know if the sales even came from that, because back then the tracking was terrible. It was like there was no tracking.
I remember that.
I'm pretty sure that the actual sales of that book came from these seminars I was helping teach. I was like a co-coach for this company called the ABCs. And we would recommend your book as part of the program, and then people would sign up. I mean, and those are people that really got to know us. And most of that program was like literally like, you know, body language, you know, get a haircut, learn how to, you know, approach a girl. And then we would briefly on this very Sunday, we would talk about sex, because a lot of the guys that would take the program were virgins, or they had very little experience. And including me, like before I read your book, I was super insecure. I was super, like, I just never learned this stuff. You know, I didn't know where to learn it. I didn't know, like, my dad never taught this to me. I never had an older brother. You know, you can't learn it from porn. You can't learn it from any of this. And it was actually, I have to thank you. Like, I'm now like a pretty normal guy in bed, and I'm actually pretty good. Like now, like it took me, you know, 20 years to figure it out, but like nowadays I'm like, oh, you know, I'm pretty confident. Like I know how to please a woman, and I know like how to be in the moment. And if it wasn't for your book, I don't think I would have ever learned that. And it's a shame, because there's not really any, still in 2020, there's not really a way for guys to even learn this stuff in a non-cheesy pickup way.
Yeah, right, man. And it's incredible to see how far you've come, how far other guys from the community back in the day, 20 years ago, have come. I feel like maybe, even though we've come to both realize that maybe going out to bars and picking up girls and having one-night stands, it's kind of a waste of time. It's not really what makes me happy, I realize. I think a lot of people realize that. But there are really valuable skills that you learn in that journey that can help you later on.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember being in your house in Houston. It was you, Ray, Kwa, and
that was Qua's house, and I remember.
And I remember, like, you know, you guys were all running this business, but, you know, your heart wasn't really in it anymore, you know, and you were like, okay, like, I want to start something different. And I remember you had this idea for becoming the #1 fitness channel on YouTube. And at the time, it was, you know, there was a lot of videos on YouTube already. It was starting to get popular. And I was like, there's no way he's going to be the #1 fitness channel. There's so much competition. And you guys, you and Mike Chang started sneaking out to 24 Hour Fitness at like 2 a.m. to film when there was nobody there. And you guys were like meal prepping all day, and I remember eating those meals, but
yes.
it didn't help, because I would eat like 2 or 3, and then I would have a pizza after, or some Mexican food.
Yeah, a lot of guys that worked for us would do that too. It was, yeah, a lot of people.
And I was like, these meal preps aren't working, man. Like, I ain't leaning up.
Man, it was. I do remember that as well, and man, that was I remember specifically talking to my former business partner about this, because he was a lot more experienced with internet marketing than me back at that time. And he was like, oh, so you guys are making YouTube videos and making a fitness product. There's so many other fitness products out there. So I don't think it's realistic to like make $1 million a year in revenue from this product. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I agree. You're right about that. My goal back then was just to make a few $100,000 in revenue from this product, and I kind of saw that as a launching pad for a bigger business. I didn't realize there was so much demand for getting six-pack abs, but yeah, I mean, I didn't see it coming either. I never anticipated how big it would grow.
I mean, in retrospect, like, it seems, you know, brilliant, right? You know, there was no good content. I mean, there was lots of fitness content, but none of it was good. And there was no, like, free content. You couldn't go on YouTube and actually do a whole workout. Nowadays, you can go on YouTube, you can Google, like, 1 hour yoga session, or 1 hour back, you know, body weight session, or, you know, whatever you Google. You'll get a good quality 1 hour free training. And then maybe in there'll be a link to something else. But back then, there was nothing. It was like 2-minute clips of crap filmed with like a potato. And you guys were the first ones to actually have like legitimate workouts on there. So in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, you guys, you know, provided good value. You had a jacked Asian dude, which nobody ever had seen. And they're like, right. if this Asian dude can do it, like, why can't I do it? And you guys are the first ones to even have like the shirtless fitness people.
Yes. And man, I got to give a lot of credit to Mike Chang for that. He did a really great job with the workouts. His personality is so engaging on camera, so we kind of had a good base of content to start with. Then when we started adding the advertising in, it just took it to the next level. But what I learned though is that advertising can scale things up by a scale of 100, but if people don't want the thing in the first place, you can't really scale up something that people don't want. But I think that was one advantage that we had coming in, that it was kind of something there was demand for, so the advertising worked better.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, you guys are spending so much money on ads. I mean, people know Six Pack Shortcuts, not necessarily from even the program, but just from all, like, you guys are the only ones advertising on YouTube for a while. Like, you guys basically just took it over.
Yeah, we started advertising on YouTube before it was integrated with Google Ads, when it was YouTube promoted videos. Back at that time, the advertising system was horrible. There was no, like, campaign optimization. The targeting was very primitive. The whole system was really terrible. But back then, there was hardly anybody advertising. So you could buy targeted views for like 1 cent or 2 cents in the United States, like really, really incredibly cheap. And I think we really benefited from that, getting in early before the competition heated up.
Yeah, and it was funny because I would see you guys. I mean, your ads would just show up on pretty much everything. It was almost like you guys were like it looked like you guys had set like an unlimited budget or like a $20,000 a day budget, and you're just like, yeah, just run it, just run it.
I remember our friend Adam Lyons, he actually told me about that when we first started doing that. And for everybody listening right now, the way that we did that was through a technique called remarketing, where basically this is a common technique now, but back in like 2010, this was like the very early days where it was just first starting. Our Google Ads rep called us up and she said, hey, you guys should try out this new thing we have. It's called remarketing. You basically put a cookie on someone's computer that's been to your website. Then you can keep showing them ads no matter what video they're watching. And I'm like, we'll try it out on a small scale. I don't know if this is going to work. But yeah, it really worked like crazy. And a lot of the ideas that we had, a lot of the kind of the innovations in our advertising actually came from suggestions from our Google Ads reps. Probably only about a third of the suggestions actually worked, but we tried them all out and we were able to see which ones were the big winners.
Yeah, that's really smart. And for everyone listening right now, just kicking themselves in the butt saying like, oh, I wish I would have started earlier. You know, it's too late now. Everything's saturated now. It's not, because, I mean, maybe, this type of YouTube advertising might be, might be oversaturated, but there's always something new that is clunky and hard to do and not tested that is going to work. And I remember back in I think it was like around that same time, when Google Ads first came out, like the keyword search, it was free and then became like 1 penny or something. Do you remember those days?
Oh, that's way back. Well, I wasn't advertising back in those days, but yeah, I've heard people talk about that.
I wasn't either. I wasn't advertising either, but someone had actually sent me an ebook saying, like, and it had the cheesiest title. Maybe that's why I never read it. It was kind of like, internet millionaire, internet pay-per-click millionaire or something. And then it was like, yeah, there's this new, search, platform called Google, and they have free ads, and you could just send them to a ClickBank affiliate product, and then you make $1 million. And I remember reading this, thinking like, oh, this makes sense. So I forwarded it to my buddy Chris Lill, and I was like, hey, you should do this. It sounds like something you would be good at. And every time I bring it up to him nowadays, he kicks himself in the butt, thinking, man, why didn't I spend 4 hours and figure this out? So nowadays, I don't know if it's going to be Instagram ads or TikTok ads or whatever the new kind of platform is that people haven't really tried out. There's always going to be a next opportunity.
Yeah, right. In the year 2030, I think people will be looking at this right now because we don't know exactly what the next opportunity is that's going to blow up like that. But if you try different things, then something's going to work out.
Yeah, 100%. So when Six Pack Shortcuts started getting big and you guys were doing so. One of the last episodes we had was 248. Mike Chang was on there, and he basically dipped out when you guys started getting really big. You guys, I think he said you guys are doing, was it 13 million a year revenue at the time or something? But
I gotta correct the record on that.
Yeah.
Well, it was actually a little bit more than that in the revenue. It was north of 20 million in revenue, but he undersold it a little bit. But yeah, it was a little bit bigger than that.
Okay. So that's when he dipped out, but you guys kept growing, right? What did you guys eventually hit?
With because I sold the company a few years ago, they asked me just not to go into the specifics, but
Okay.
it was north of 20 million, and yeah, it was substantially above the $13 million figure Mike Chang quoted.
Yeah, it was it. I mean, now now it's been it's kind of so long, but like at the time, I'm sure it was hard, right? Because you're like in your mind, were you like, man, we're doing so well, we're doing more than 13 million a year. Like you're the face of this. Like how can you just walk away from this? Like was it a really tough transition?
Yeah, you could say that. It was definitely a tough transition, and I mean, to be straight up, I was pretty angry at him for a while. But in hindsight, though, everything did work out for the best, and I realize now he kind of found the path that made him happy, and things worked out better for me in the end because of that. I realized that. So when Mike Chang left the business, we were very dependent on him because he was not only the CEO of the company, he was also the face of the company, and everything involved him. Where every commercial had him in it, every product had him in it. It was just all about Mike Chang, and that's kind of the way we designed it. In the beginning of the business, we saw that was working, so we kind of kept doubling down on that. When he left, though, we kind of had a situation where we're like, oh, shit, we have to find somebody new to be on camera or else, like, we're going to go out of business. Like almost 100 people are going to lose their jobs. So we got to figure something out. So what we did is we started working with a few different people. The first few people that we started working with, they're great guys, and some of them are still with the company to this day. But the products we released weren't commercially successful. So then we were like, oh, man, like this is even worse. But when we really started taking off after that was when we started working with Mark McGillier. So Mark McGillier, he's I believe he's 56 right now, but he's in his 50s. He has a full head of gray hair, but this guy is ripped. He's in incredible shape. So we were working with him for a little while, making some commercials for six-pack shortcuts kind of targeted towards men over 40. And then we had the idea, like, what if rather than trying to make it work for six-pack shortcuts, which is kind of a product intended for younger guys, what if we just made Mark McGillier have his own product where it's only intended for guys over 40 from the start? So we launched that product, Abs After 40, and that was a big success, and that kind of brought the company back. Then we launched a few other products with different trainers for men over 40, and I'm really glad that happened in hindsight because it showed me that when you do know the marketing and when you know how to run the business, that you can have different people be the face of the company and still make things successful. So in hindsight, I never would have been forced to do that if Mike hadn't gone on his own path, and I'm just glad everything worked out in hindsight.
Yeah, and that's a great learning experience because, I mean, like two things really stick out to me with that. One is as people saw that, the original, six-pack shortcuts with, the big Asian dude, was taken off, people were probably thinking, oh, man, that's a great niche. Why didn't I think of that? Okay, now it's too late. There's no more niches out there. But yet, the entire time, someone could have been like, okay, yeah, that works. Why don't I do something similar, but in the niche with men over 40 or men over 50 or women over 40, whatever it is. I mean, there's so many niches out there that people just don't take over, or they just try to compete. I mean, I'm sure you guys had a bunch of copycats, 8packabs.com or 9pack shortcuts,
Yeah, exactly.
And
man, I do think I know what I was thinking, what a lot of people are thinking. Like, I had never really made serious money before that by doing anything else. Like, I'd never made money like that. So I'm like, man, like I'm good at marketing six-pack abs. Like, this is my skill. So I got to stay in my niche that I'm good at. But I realized, though, that was just kind of a limiting belief that I could apply these skills to other things. And I've realized even more than that I could apply it even outside fitness. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there listening now that they're like, oh, this is my thing. Like, I can't really go outside this. But I think they might be surprised if they try different things that if they have marketing skills, it can really apply to any industry.
Yeah, 100%. I would say that's probably one of the most valuable lessons is everything that we do teaches us a skill. And if we're good at it and we can make it work in that industry, we can pivot into something else. And sometimes we need to pivot out of necessity. Our business partner gets enlightened and goes on a little trip and leaves the company and we have to pivot, or the industry changes or something changes and we're like, okay, we have to make it work, or we just kind of grow out of it, right? Like I grew out of being part of the pickup scene after a few years of in my 20s of going out every weekend and partying and trying to pick up chicks. I realized that's not really me. That's not what I want to dedicate my life to. I'm not it's that was one chapter that was closed. Now let me go into Muay Thai and MMA, and I did that for a few years, and then I got into the travel niche, and then now I'm in the online business niche, and then investing niche, and all the skills that I learned throughout that journey I've taken along with me, as have you.
Yeah, and just imagine, like, the 20 years back, if we had never started all these new chapters, each one, I know it was probably so hard for you. It was definitely hard for me to start anew after becoming an expert in something. But, man, all that growth never would have happened if we hadn't started something new.
100%. And I remember, so Six Pack Shortcuts, evolved from Mike Chang, buff Asian dude, then to Fit Over 40. And then I remember you guys bought... I remember on your personal Facebook, maybe you wrote, I just bought sixpackabs.com for $1 million or something insane.
Well, it was much less than $1 million. I will say that. Yeah, it's so this was a 2-year negotiation to buy this domain. So when we first talked to this guy is a major domain name investor that owned it. He owns dividend.com, a whole bunch of different like premium $1 million domains. And I'd always wanted that domain, sixpackabs.com. So we contacted him and we offered to buy it, but he was asking for a huge amount. He was asking for not only a huge amount of cash, but ongoing royalties in perpetuity. Where I'm like, man, like we can't pay you ongoing royalties like forever just for a domain name. So we ended up the deal didn't go through. He started the site with a few other trainers, and he was making like moderate amounts of money from it. But I think essentially after a few years, he wasn't really making enough to justify the time he was putting into it because this guy was making serious money. He was making like money from dividend.com, all these other premium domains. So I think he kind of just wanted to divest from fitness. So a couple years later, out of the blue, he contacted us and he's like, hey, so how much can you offer for sixpackabs.com? Back at that time, we were mainly focused on abs after 40. So I was kind of thinking like, man, like you're contacting me now that it's no longer valuable for us. I didn't really see the value in it. So I offered like a pretty minimal amount, much less than you would expect and much less than it sold for before. And he accepted it. It was so much less than what we initially offered. But I was real happy he accepted it. But I do think it kind of showed me that with these premium domains, it's kind of like buying like real estate or almost like buying a company. It's probably not going to be like a simple like back and forth for a premium domain like that. It might take some work sometimes. It might take going through a few deals. But if you put the work into it, you can find good deals. Yeah,
especially when they know you guys are sixpackshortcuts.com, that you're invested, that you guys are successful, and it puts you in a hard position versus, if you're trying to buy a domain where nobody really knew who you were. And this is where a lot of those startups get in trouble when they'll buy, something.io just to get started, or like get, whatever app.com or, and then people read that they got, $100 million in funding or something, and they want to go buy the .com. They have them by the balls, and it's a hard industry. Like, what do you actually think about the domainer industry? Do you think that should exist, or do you wish? I wish that was it was illegal and people just couldn't squat on domains and charge crazy amounts of money.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's kind of messed up when you're paying this guy all this money. Basically, all he did is squatted on a domain. Man, it's tough to like think of the alternative to that though, because if you outlawed squatting, people would just build out like a fake site that's like the minimum to not appear to be a squatter.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really like it, but I would say, I mean, just in terms of what people out there could do, I think if you just establish yourself on a non-premium domain, and so you have an alternative. And then you negotiate from a position of strength where you don't need the domain. I think that's the best way to go. Like you were saying, like the companies that come in with funding and they're like, okay, we're buying this domain at any cost. That's the ones that really get scalped.
Yeah. So you guys never took funding, did you?
No, we never had any investor funding until I sold the assets.
Yeah, and that when you bought that domain, sixpackabs.com, did you think it was really going to increase your business? And like, what actually happened after that?
When we first bought it, actually, it was when we were concentrating mainly on the men over 40 market. And when we bought it, we were still doing some sales from six-pack shortcuts in the younger guy market, but I didn't really see the potential because we weren't really in that market anymore. Later on, though, we started testing some ads and we started migrating some things over there. And we noticed that a lot of the ads performed better going to sixpackabs.com than the exact same ad going to sixpackshortcuts.com. Most notably, we really struggled with search advertising before we bought sixpackabs.com. And it was only once we bought that domain that we were able to make search advertising really work at scale. Mostly around terms with the word six-pack abs in them. As you can imagine, if somebody's searching and they see sixpackabs.com, it's a more trustable domain than sixpackshortcuts.com, so I think that's why it worked. So I bought it because the deal was so good, and then we only really realized the potential of that a few years later.
That's funny. And I think maybe a part of that is, especially on Google search, I'm assuming sixpackshortcuts.com is so long that it gets cut off, or maybe gets ellipsed.
It was close, but the full thing did fit in there where you saw the full sixpackshortcuts.com. But okay. I think the negative part of that domain, basically the market changed a lot from the time we started the business until the time where I exited. In the beginning, when I first started advertising on YouTube, the word shortcuts was a really big advantage because that's kind of where the market was at. They were looking for a quick way to get six-pack abs. Over time, though, by the time in 2019 where I exited from the business, the word shortcut had become a serious disadvantage, and also it become kind of incongruent with the approach that I had personally I personally believed in to get six-pack abs. When we first started the business, I was kind of in that headspace myself where I was looking for a get-rip-quick type of thing. When I learned from Mike Chang, it wasn't exactly that, but that was kind of my mentality, like how can I get the most ripped in the least amount of time? By 2015, 2016, though, I kind of began to realize that I should be focusing more on health. So the idea of a six-pack shortcut wasn't something that made me excited like it did in the beginning. So those were kind of the reason for it, both the financial reason and just personal preference.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just went on the site just before this because I haven't logged into it in years. And I noticed that even though like it began with six-pack shortcuts, now it's like if you go sixpackabs.com, it's like basically a supplement site. It's an e-commerce site that happens to have some programs. It happens to still have the six-pack shortcuts program for like $59 or something. But it's really like I would imagine it's a tiny, tiny part of their revenue now. It's completely changed.
Yeah, I've been out of the company for a little more than a year now, so things may have changed since that time. But when before I exited from the company, if I'm remembering correctly, it was about 60% supplement revenue and about 40% digital programs. So digital programs were still important, but especially a lot of the recurring revenue where people would buy month after month after month was supplements. We didn't get started with supplements for a very long time just because I was kind of intimidated, but because I thought it would be a lot more complicated than it really is. But it's actually a lot simpler than I thought to make a supplement. And I found the advantage of supplements is that we had some people on the phone that would just buy every digital product where we'd have people buying like 3 or 4 or 5 digital products. But there's a limit to how many digital fitness products you can consume. After a while, it's just so much you can't possibly go through anymore. When you have supplements and digital products, though, I think it's kind of the best of both worlds. And I think that model can be applied to many different industries, not just fitness, where you have physical products and digital products, and it increases your total customer value.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think these are really, really valuable tips for anyone, really in any industry, it's not just one or the other. I mean, there's so many people who sell exclusively physical products online, whether it's through Amazon FBA or through dropshipping or through their own private label brand. But, they completely shy away from digital products, whether it's an online course or an ebook or whatever it is. And then you have the people on the other side who just do either a digital product or a service-based business and never even think about crossing that realm. I think you guys really, mastered combining the two. And it wasn't, this perfect game plan, from, 2005. It was like step by step, like, okay, what else can we do?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people when they first get into online business, I know I did this myself, where you can kind of your style of marketing or the type of product you're selling kind of becomes a part of your identity. Like I remember when I first started it, I used to tell people like, I'm a direct marketer. Don't even say the word brand in my presence. Like I would be, I learned from a lot of old school direct marketing gurus, and I was very against e-commerce and brand marketing. Later on, though, when it became easier to build a Shopify store and to test some things out, some people were talking to me about it, and they're like, "Hey, we could test this out for like $5,000 or $10,000. Why not just give it a try and see if it does work?" And that kind of became my mentality later on. That when you have the money, if you can test something out for $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000. $100, then you should test it. Even if you think it's unlikely it'll work. Even if 1 out of 10 of those types of ideas works and blows up, it's going to justify the other 10 failures. So that would be my advice to people listening. Like if there's ideas that you can try out on a small scale, and you might be able to try it out with a few $100s. Try it out even if you don't think it'll work, because sometimes you'll be surprised.
I love it. And who are some of these kind of old school marketing gurus that you would follow?
So I was real into Dan Kennedy. I've listened to pretty much every Dan Kennedy seminar. My apologies if Dan Kennedy is listening to this, but back then I was very poor, so I pirated it. Our friend Paul actually gave me pirated copies. So that was my original marketing training, pirated copies of Dan Kennedy seminars. I listened to a lot of John Carlton as well. Basically, those were my big two. I listened to John Carlton a lot on the copywriting, Dan Kennedy more on the strategy and business building side. But that's who I learned from back in like 2005.
Oh, I like it. And I've met a lot of people who actually did get started pirating, info products and learning from it. But I would say the number one reason why it's not a good idea is really because if you don't buy something, if you don't invest money into it, the chances of you actually going through the whole thing and then taking action is very small. Because the amount of people who've pirated that audiobook or that course versus the people who've actually went and did it is very, very low. Like it's like 0.001%. Because if it's free, you download it, it's kind of in your background. But if someone actually spent a couple $100 buying it, the chance of them reading it and taking action is much higher. So it's almost like people are shooting themselves in the foot if they don't have that personal motivation or drive. I mean, and I think you're a very driven guy, so it didn't really matter if you had to spend the money on it or not. You would have done it. But for most people, they just if they didn't invest the money, they won't do it.
Yeah, that's really true. And actually, in my case, I do. In hindsight, if I had just bought it originally, I would have valued it and taken action faster. Qual gave me this hard drive full of mostly like reality shows and like random junk, but there was Dan Kennedy things buried within it. So I didn't even look at this for 2 years. So this was just sitting there for 2 years. I wasn't taking any action. Then finally, I kind of discovered it. But yeah, if I'd bought it from the beginning and it wasn't buried in junk, I probably would have taken action faster.
Yeah, same with me. Like that was it ClickBank Millionaire's ebook. If I actually had bought that, even if I bought it for $30, I would have read it instead of just forwarding it to my friend and saying, "Hey, you do this." So thinking back, man, us trying to save a couple bucks ends up costing us 2 years of potential revenue. And imagine if we had gotten in and did these things 2 years prior before there was competition. I mean, we would have just killed everyone.
Man, and I'm glad you brought that up. I haven't thought about that in such a long time, but it's crazy to think about back in 2008, kind of the scarcity mentality. You know what I mean? I was like, man, this course is $197. That's a lot. Well, because I was just graduating from college. I was working at Jamba Juice, I believe, so I was pretty poor. But even so, it would have been worth it. And clearly, in hindsight, it would have been worth it.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay, so you guys transitioned. Why did you end up selling six-pack abs or six-pack shortcuts? Why did you end up selling the company?
There were a few different reasons. The first reason was it was great to start the company that I loved and to be able to do what I wanted to do, to work on my passion, which is fitness. Sixpackabs.com by that time had become a company with a pretty big office. And I wouldn't say it was corporate, but it was an office. It was an office environment. There's an HR department. There's kind of some bigger company rules that you had to follow. It was, for a while, something that I thought that I needed to do to make money. But eventually I realized that while I enjoyed the financial benefits of it, that I didn't want to work in an office the rest of my life. Another part of it was that one thing that I always wanted to do was go on camera myself and to kind of build a business where I was the on-camera guru. I didn't really feel like I was the best person to do that in a fitness business because I'm in pretty decent shape, but compared to some fitness models, there's basically people who could do the job much better than me for a much lower price. And in that business, the best focus for me was focusing on the advertising. And then also, just from the beginning of the business, my goal was to one day get an exit. So, and to eventually, kind of live a lifestyle of more freedom. I wouldn't say that it was definitely a good experience. It brought me to where I'm at today, but I'm glad that I did get the exit. I get to work from home now, kind of enjoy a lifestyle of freedom. And you got to appreciate, Johnny, man, you're living a great lifestyle. You're making money, get to do whatever you want, you get to work on your own terms. And I realized, like, working in an office, that it was something that I didn't think mattered to me at first, but after years and years of doing it, I realized that I didn't want to spend my whole life that way. So that was kind of the reasons why.
I could definitely see it. I think that was a smart move. You know, it was, things are doing well. You guys are in an upswing. I'm sure you got a lot of money for it. Can you actually talk about how much you sold it for?
I can't talk about that. They asked me basically just not to disclose any specific numbers for the business, and just out of courtesy for them. Okay. But I can talk a little bit about the process where, man, it was a very, very difficult negotiation. This, again, another 2-year negotiation. These negotiations sometimes stretch out a long time. And when we sold the company, we were basically negotiating, and there were like all these different things they wanted to look into. They started doing due diligence, and they wanted doing another round of due diligence. And kind of what I realized was that there were pretty aggressive negotiators where essentially the costs of doing the due diligence were so much that the company's profits went down. And then because the company's profits were down, then they requested a lower price, and then another round of due diligence and some things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy to where we got to in the end, but it was a negotiating process like that where they really pulled out all the stops to get the best possible price for them. And I mean, I don't blame them. Of course, you know, any businessman wants to get the best possible price, but it definitely wasn't an easy process, I'll tell you that. So we ultimately had to accept a lower price than we originally started talking about. But I was happy to where we got to in the end. And what I realized in the end was that the most important thing was to do what I really wanted to do. And as long as the money is enough, so where I can buy everything I want to buy. And I realized, like, I had this bigger goal in my mind, but I'm still a multi-millionaire. The exit was still enough where I don't really have to worry about money again. And I think that's the most important thing. So I would say it was a long process. It was a tough negotiation, and we ultimately had to lower the amount from the original offer. But ultimately, I'm glad that we accepted it.
Man, that is a sneaky tactic to drag that out, and because I think, like, for a lot of business sellers, like, once we kind of mentally commit to selling a business, we kind of just want out. It's like 1 foot, you know, like it's like 1 foot out of a relationship where we're like, you know, we just want to get out no matter what. And
yeah,
that is sneaky that the cost of due diligence ended up, you know, lowering your actual, maybe not your multiple, but the actual and the total amount. It's smart on their side, but I can imagine that was 2 years of hell, just kind of dragging through that and kind of just mentally being 1 foot out already.
Yeah, and I mean, there were other good things going on in my life. Like I met my current girlfriend during that time, and some things in my personal life were going well. So I wasn't like living in hell or anything, but that part was a lot of hard work. But I do think that was something I was never aware of before I sold sixpackabs.com, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs aren't aware of that. What I would say, the way I could have gotten a little bit of a better deal was by waiting a little bit longer to negotiate exclusively with one investor. So what a lot of the investors that we were talking with wanted to do was to basically kind of agree on get a preliminary deal pending due diligence, and then they wanted an agreement where they wanted to be the only ones that we would negotiate with. We signed a contract where we're exclusive with them. I realized that in hindsight, about a year and a half before the deal went through, we signed that exclusivity agreement because I thought we were almost there. I thought we were like a month or two away. I trusted them. But once they had that exclusivity agreement, at that point they had more leverage, and they used that to get a lower price. And again, in the end, we got to a good deal in the end. But if I could have done it again, I would have waited a little bit longer to go exclusive and to have more leverage from another investor.
Yeah, that's a great tip. So for anyone listening that is going to sell a business in the future, this can save you lots of headache, lots of time, and probably a lot of money as well. And there's just not enough information about this. I mean, there's not enough people selling multi-million-dollar businesses that have been through this process that talk about it. So it's not like you can pick up an ebook.
On this podcast.
Yeah. That's why I'm so glad that I have people like you in my network that I can bring on, because not everybody's in that position right now to sell the business, but one day, when you're like, oh yeah, go back to that episode 252 and take a listen to Dan's struggles. Yeah. So how many people were actually, sorry, like I was going to ask, like how many people were actually still partners? Because I'm assuming Mike Chang was completely out of it, so he wasn't getting any of that sale. Was it you, Henry, and anyone else?
Yeah, it was in the beginning. It was me, Mike Chang, and then a little while after we started the business, we brought on Henry. When Mike decided he wanted to go in another way, we ended up buying Mike out of the business. And then I believe about a year after that, Henry kind of decided that he didn't really want to work on a fitness business anymore, so we ended up buying him out as well. And I think it was, about 2 years after that, maybe a year and a half after that, I got bought out of the business. So within a few years, essentially, we all got bought out. There was basically it was one company led by one guy that owned the majority share. There was another minority investor when they did buy in. I'm not sure exactly about the details of how they split the equity up between them or what they've done since that time. But that was kind of the timeline of it.
So a big question I have for you is, so this whole time, you're in Austin, lots of benefits of being there. It's a cool city. And I'm sure for marketing, it was really good, right? Like, you guys had meetups. Like, I think you guys have a big monthly meetup there. What was it called?
Oh, Internet Marketing Party. It's on COVID-19 hiatus right now, but they're going to start up soon. But yeah, that's kind of the networking group here.
And so what do you think it was a very big benefit of you being in a place like Austin to be able to network and grow your business to get these ideas versus if you ran this business remotely, like, while traveling or in Thailand or, Sri Lanka where I am?
I think it definitely was. And I think that at first what I thought when I started going to these kind of events is like, okay, so I'm going to go, I'm going to hear the speaker talk, and I'm going to get some knowledge. I'm going to get some technique I can do, and I'm going to implement that. There was a little bit of that, but I think the bigger way that it helped me was just by meeting people and changing my belief system. Before I lived in Austin, it was basically me and this one guy, Jason McGarva, back in Boston, Massachusetts. We were the only internet marketers in the entire city, and there was nobody else. So it was difficult for me to imagine becoming a millionaire off of an online business because I'd never met anybody who'd done it before. When I moved to Austin, though, there were a bunch of people who had done that, and I kind of had this picture in my mind of what an internet marketing millionaire would look like. But then I met Michael Lovitch. Do you know who that is, Michael Lovitch?
I think I heard his name, but I don't know who he is.
So he was back at that time. He was running the supplement company called Real Dose. Now he's running the Baby Bathwater Institute, where they do great networking events. That was the event where Mike did mushrooms. Actually, they do great events now. But anyways, I met this guy way back in the day, back in like 2010. I didn't really know about his business background before I started talking with him. He was just kind of a goofy guy. He's got like this big like Jewish afro. He was wearing like plaid shorts and like flip flops. He kind of looked like a homeless person, right? This guy shows up at my house just like kind of acting drunk and like looking like a homeless person. But then I found out he was an internet marketing multi-millionaire. And later on I started talking to him. The appearance is very deceptive. He's an incredibly intelligent guy, and later on he taught me a lot of things. I've gone to a lot of his events. But just meeting him and a lot of people like that were just regular guys I'm just hanging out with and drinking, and they're like, yeah, I make millions of dollars online, and you find out it's real. And I kind of have this thing in my head where I'm like, man, if he can do it, like he's a smart guy, but I'm pretty smart too. There's no reason why I can't do this too. And I feel like that's a greater way it helped me. Just being around people like that, you realize like if they can do it, there's no reason why I can't do it too.
I like it. And I think that's a really big benefit of being in a big city, especially in a relatively expensive city, where it forces people to kind of be a little bit higher level. The benefit of being a digital nomad in places like Chiang Mai is you meet a lot more online entrepreneurs, but it's harder to meet people who are really, really hitting like the millions in revenue mark. I mean, I've met a few, and to really reach out to them, I do a monthly dinner called Six Figure Sushi, where as long as you're making $100K a year, you're invited to this dinner. And that's been a good way to kind of connect people who are otherwise in the city. A lot of people kind of just starting out or just kind of getting by, making, their goal is to make $1,000 a month or something. But I have noticed that, like the really successful people I know are all in San Diego. They're in Austin. They're in these big expensive cities. Maybe, even like Barcelona.
Yeah, yeah, I do think that's true. Man, and one thing that I think an advantage that you have that you should appreciate is um, a lot of people, I feel like when they do meet wealthy people, they're meeting wealthy people that build conventional businesses where they're going to an office and working 10 hours a day. And I do feel like it's really great to meet multiple different people that are making money but are doing it in a way that allows them freedom as well. I think that's one limiting belief that I had when I first started. I'm like, man, to make real money, you got to have an office. Like that's just what everybody does. You got to have an office. But really where that belief started to change for me was when I met Ryan Kowalski, he runs Altair Publishing. He used to be known as Vin DiCarlo. Yeah, now he's not in that industry anymore. That was a long time ago. He's got a bunch of different supplement offers and a bunch of different things that he's doing better with. But anyways, when I first met him, this guy was making I think it was around $30 million in revenue a year and really good margin as well. I don't remember exactly what it was, but this guy was banking. And his whole company was basically six guys. I mean, six really smart guys, but six guys in their 20s and 30s just sitting around in his apartment in New York, just typing some stuff in their laptops. And I'm like, man, like, how are you making money like this just working in your apartment with just a bunch of like scrubby looking 20-year-old guys like this? But I realized that ultimately a lot of the office and the appearance of business success kind of comes from the way things used to be before the internet. And a lot of that stuff isn't really necessary anymore. And I've realized that now with my agency too, that you don't really need a big office. You don't really need to dress up every day. You can make shirtless videos like this and you can still be pretty.
Yeah. It is really crazy. And I think this is a huge benefit of living in this digital age that we do. I mean, our parents or our grandparents, there's no way they could have done this. They had to go somewhere. They had to look professional, dress professional. I mean, even, if we were born 10 years earlier, it was hard. And we're so lucky now that we're literally having this, podcast recording from across the freaking world. I mean, like Sri Lanka of all places. And we're able to do this, and I think it's a huge benefit. Yeah,
it really is, and I am really grateful too that I sold sixpackabs.com and I started working from home about 1 year before COVID-19 hit. Man, we were so fortunate that we started doing this before we were forced to do this. And I think this has just really opened my eyes to the value of working from home and not being dependent on a physical location.
Yeah, I did a couple episodes called, basically like a COVID series on how digital nomads or people who were working from home, like how it affected us. And it was crazy because, while the rest of the U.S. was struggling and people were out of work, all the digital nomads, or at least the majority of them that I had interviewed, they were all doing fine. And a lot of them, especially in e-commerce, their businesses excelled. I mean, they actually made more money while spending less because you couldn't, buy anything. You couldn't go out. You couldn't spend $100 in the bar. So it's been like some of the best months for most of my friends. It's crazy.
Yeah, and for my own business with the ad agency, where we noticed that some clients were negatively affected, but we had this one client in particular that sold to older people, mostly people in their 60s and 70s, and we introduced them to YouTube advertising. But when COVID-19 hit, their campaign just scaled through the roof. I think a lot of other people that sell to an older market see kind of the same effects. A lot of older people, they probably, people in their 70s and 80s may not have been spending much time on YouTube before, but those are the people that were the most quarantined, that were taking it the most seriously, and who might have never bought things online before, but which started to. Yeah, and businesses like that, I think, really experience a benefit from the COVID-19 lockdown.
Yeah, me as well. So some of my e-commerce stores, one of them sells kind of really expensive products. They range from $1,000 to $3,000, and these products normally would sell like once every week or something because they're pretty pricey. During this lockdown, I think people probably, they're probably in their late 40s or 50s. They're at home just thinking like, okay, what can I buy? How can I buy it? And they ended up just clicking, just figuring it out. But like, all right, this is how you use a website. This is how you put in a credit card number. This is how you order something. And it's been a very unique time. And I think that's going to continue even after COVID ends. more and more people of all demographics are going to buy things online.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say the benefit of that, of making money during a crisis, is a lot more than the money you directly make. I know for me, the majority of my net worth is in stocks and bonds, and almost all of it in stocks. So when the market crashed with the COVID-19, I was kind of feeling some anxiety. Yeah, like I've been listening to Invest Like a Boss. I've been studying investing, and I know the state of the course, buy and hold. But man, when you see your wealth drop by 1/3 within a month, I might have sold if I didn't have new money coming in. I think what gave me the confidence to not sell and to actually buy more stock during that time was that I did have more money coming in and that my business was doing well. So not only like the money that you make from working from home during a crisis, but the confidence that it gives you to not sell your assets, I think is really valuable.
I like it. So I am curious, like with all this freedom that you have, I mean, obviously you have the money for it. You can work remotely. Why have you chosen to stay in Austin and not travel more?
Man, I really do want to travel, and that's something that I'm definitely going to make happen this year. I had actually been planning a trip to go to Thailand in April. Essentially, I was thinking about going. I was going to travel for the first time to go internationally, but then COVID-19 hit. Basically, that's the reason why. Because of this, I've delayed it, but I really want to make it happen. I'm a little bit jealous of you, man. You've been all these places, Sri Lanka and Thailand, and I really want to check all these places out. I haven't been too many places outside the U.S., but I really want to, and now I got the opportunity to do it.
Man, it's crazy because I think a lot of people listening to this don't realize, but most Americans don't even have a passport. I think it was something like, only like a third of Americans actually even own a passport. So most people haven't been abroad. Most people haven't traveled. And I think it's the American mentality where we have to work, we have to make millions of dollars before we can actually even take the time off to do it. And it's you're not alone. I think I'd be willing to bet, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of very successful people, a lot of them multimillionaires who've just never traveled because they were so busy either building their business or it just seemed like such a big step.
Yeah, and I do think too, One reason why I personally didn't travel back when I was running Six Pack Shortcuts was I was concerned about the effect on my employees. I know one thing I do as well is that my daughter lives in Massachusetts. I live in Texas, so I'm basically out of work 4 weeks a year to go see her. So I am taking a good amount of time off just to go to Massachusetts, not anywhere that's like super cool. But I realize now that it would be good to take more time off. And when you work from home, when you work with people remotely, that's something that you can definitely do. I was just kind of concerned, though, about the effect on office morale if I didn't show up for a month, but everybody else has to show up. And I realized that is kind of a concern with the office, but that's just another reason to work from home, because if I went to Thailand for a month, I could run my business the exact same way now and nothing would really be affected. So yeah, if you're listening to this right now, don't get in the office, work from home.
Yeah, I like it. So here's a plan, Dan. Whenever this COVID thing ends, definitely, like, hopefully by, let's say, December or something, come out to Thailand, come out to Chiang Mai. I think you'll like it. Come for like 1, 2, 3 months. We'll set you up at the office there, co-working space. We'll hang out, and you can work remotely from there.
Man, I would love to. All right, consider it done.
I love it. Let's do it, man. So tell me now, so what is this new agency that you're working on?
So it's called Social Response Marketing. Basically what we do is we do a lot of the YouTube marketing the same way as we did for Six Pack Shortcuts and SixPackAbs.com, and we kind of apply those principles to other companies. Right now, we're working with a few different companies where what we do for bigger companies is we do the whole process from start to finish. My team of copywriters will brainstorm the ideas for the ads. They'll outline the ads, write out the scripts. We'll get everything filmed. We'll source the talent for the company, and then we'll run the ad campaign. So pretty much start to finish, we'll do it for you. What we're doing right now is we're only offering that to companies that are spending over $50,000 a month on online advertising, just because for the price we're charging, that's about how much you'll need to spend to make a profit on what we're doing. We're also starting some new programs as well, where we're doing some lower price coaching programs, and that's more appropriate for people that are first starting off, where we're not actually filming the ads and running the ad campaigns for you, but we'll jump on the phone with you once a week, give you detailed instructions on how to build your ad campaigns, and that's a much more affordable option for most people. And then I have my book, The 15 Steps to Profitable YouTube Marketing. I'm going to be releasing it soon. And if you have no money at all, if you just want to get started for $0, you can pick up a copy of that book for free, and you can just kind of learn the basics for free. And then my hope is that you'll build your business and later be in a place to invest in the higher price programs.
Yeah, I like it. So I think some people might be listening thinking $50,000 a month in advertising. Who is spending that? And I think a lot of people don't realize that, if there's I mean, people ask me this all the time. They're like, Johnny, how much do you spend? What is your max budget for advertising, for your e-commerce stores? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, they're like, yeah, what's like the max limit? I'm like, well, whatever has ROI, whatever is profitable. Like, if I could spend $100,000 a month or $1 million a month in ads, I would, as long as it brought a return. And a lot of people just don't have that mentality of keep scaling until it stops working.
Yeah, and that's so true. It sounds like common sense. Like, if you spend $1,000 and make $2,000, you just want to do as much of that as you possibly can. But man, there are a lot of traditional business owners that don't really have that mentality. They're like, this is the advertising budget, and that's it. Even if we could double it and make double the profit, we're not going to double it. But just not having that limiting belief, I think, is a really big advantage.
Yeah, or like even if it doesn't double, like if I can spend $1,000 and make back $1,200, I would do that all day, And if you said, all right, well, Johnny, now if you spend, $10,000, you're only making back $11,000. I'm like, well, it's still better than making $200. I'd rather make that $1,000. And it's crazy that it's not a more popular model, but maybe this is the opportunity where there's so many companies right now that aren't spending enough money and aren't even running YouTube ads for someone like you or a copywriter or someone that understands YouTube marketing to come in and really just dominate.
Yeah, exactly. That was one thing that I first determined when I was taking on clients, because some clients do have that mentality, but I avoided working with those clients because I knew that once the campaigns go to a certain point, they might not even want to scale it anymore. What I found is a big opportunity is people doing well with some other platform. Like, I found a lot of people that are making serious money with Facebook ads. They know what they're doing. They have the right scaling mentality, but they haven't figured out YouTube yet. Like, basically, if someone does have that scaling mentality and they're doing well on another platform, they could probably do well on YouTube too, or any other platform, if they just learn the techniques.
Yeah, and I think even though YouTube ads are popular now, I still think there's so much opportunity there. I will guarantee people will look back a couple years from now and be like, man, why didn't I do this? Was it because I was too lazy to pick up a camera and actually make a video? Or I didn't want to learn this? Like, it was easier just to type some text and try to compete with the millions of other people who are also writing copy.
Exactly. Like, it seems easier to write a text ad. It seems easier to make an image ad. But it's actually harder once you learn how to make a good video. Because once you have that video made, it's an asset that you can just keep banking on over and over again. And it seems like a tough, scary thing. If you've never made these kind of videos, you're putting yourself on camera, you might be judged and things like that. It's so worth it in the long run, though. I mean, like you've seen, like I think a lot of people, they're intimidated by the idea of making YouTube ads because they're afraid of putting a video of themselves out there. But I know it's tough. I know it's easy for me to say that from where I'm at right now. But if you can just get started, just overcome that initial fear, it's so worth it in the end.
Yeah, 100%. And I know this because, I have a YouTube channel kind of really just as a side hobby for fun. And I got so excited when I started making $500 a month in YouTube ad revenue. And I was like, man, this is amazing. I'm making $500 just to put these videos up. And then I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? If I'm making $500 from ad revenue, how much are these guys making who are running the ads on my channel? Because if they're, if they're spending $1,000 a month or whatever it is, on these ads, they're probably making back, double that or at least 1.5 of that. So
exactly,
and they're not just running on my channel; they're running on tons of channels. So I'm here happy they're making $500 a month from ad revenue. They're happy that they're making probably $10,000 or $100,000 a month from advertising on all these different channels.
Exactly, that's exactly the way to think about it for anyone making a little bit of AdSense revenue out there right now. There's a lot of people that don't have the the willingness to learn even basic advertising and business skills. And for those people just making videos and getting an AdSense check, that's good for them. But if you can even learn a little bit of business skills, even like the basics of advertising, you can make a lot more money through advertising. Or even if you're making your own channel and you just advertise your own products on your own channel, most people would probably do a lot better with that than they would just by selling advertising to other companies.
Yeah, 100%. And luckily, I do a little bit of both, so it's kind of like a double dip. But you know, it is, I don't know, it is a guilty pleasure of seeing that YouTube check come in, because I'm shocked that this even exists. I mean, like, I bet you 10 years from now, we're going to be like, yeah, I remember back in the day, YouTube let us, used to host our videos for free. We didn't even have to pay them to host our videos or show our videos to people. Like, not only was it free to upload these giant, 4K videos, they would also pay us to host it. Because if YouTube didn't exist, we would literally have to pay some company to let us host our video.
Man, I can remember that. And I can remember, so I remember this very vividly. Before we started hosting our sales video with YouTube, we had our sales video on our website. By the sales video, what I mean is the main video that we'd send the advertising to, which was selling the product. So this wasn't even like a YouTube ad. All of the YouTube ads were hosted on YouTube, and then we just sent them to the sales video. So maybe 2 or 3% of the people we were advertising to even got to this video. But at the height of it, we were paying like $20,000 or $30,000 a month to host this video, and it was absurd. It was a really big cost. But we did a split test where we basically ran 2 versions of our website, one with the sales video in the YouTube video player, and then another one with the sales video in the company we're using was Rackspace to host the video. We were using the Rackspace hosted player. And we noticed that it was about the same between the 2 video players. So we switched it to YouTube. And I was like, man, that's like 20 grand or 30 grand every month in our pocket just from doing that. And I got to appreciate it. Like, we're really kind of riding on the shoulders of giants, because if not for that, it would have been so much harder to build my business, so many other businesses. And I think people should really take advantage of YouTube and these other free video hosting services.
Yeah, 100%. So thank you to YouTube, thank you to Google out there for doing this.
Right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember, so I reshared your job posting that you put up not too long ago about wanting to hire a few people to write these YouTube scripts for you. And
thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I was like, I saw this. I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity. Dan's a smart guy. It's good to. I mean, this is another kind of tip and trick for everyone is if you want to learn, if you want to like grow, try to surround yourself or work for someone who's done it already. And for the opportunity to work under someone like you who's actually done this, knows what he's talking about. Even at the beginning, they're just like a low-level employee. If they can shine and they can improve themselves, they can kind of grow up. They get to know you, and they'll end up learning and growing. And I remember sharing this in some of the Facebook groups. And Facebook groups and Reddit, it's kind of like this tricky place, right? You have you have some smart people out there, and it's a good place to connect. But you also have these, I don't want to call them idiots, but like you have these these kind of like these people who like they second guess everything. And I remember one person had a question. They're like, because in your job description, you basically said, "Hey, I'm paying this amount, whatever it was, like $600, for X amount of scripts or something." And then on the bottom, you had a link to your book saying, if you don't know YouTube copywriting, you can read my book. It's free plus shipping. And some guy commented saying, like, is Dan even offering this job? Is this just a scam to sell more of his books? And I remember replying saying, like, why can't it be both, right? Why can't it be he's actually, making a lot of money through his agency, he is hiring people, but if you're not at that level to learn this stuff yet, like, he's also giving you a chance to learn it. And yeah, he might end up making some money through this, either whatever it's book sales or through his courses in the back end. But like, I think life is both, right? Like, and people can't see that. Like, it's a weird thing where people think everything is either a complete scam or a complete, like, it has to be like, completely like, I don't even know what the word is, like, so super clean. Like, here's an ad with no links.
Because I realized, like, I think where that comes from, I used to think like this a long time ago, because when you've been burned before, when you buy something and you weren't really happy with it or you got scammed, then it's kind of like being in a bad relationship where you kind of carry that forward and you're distrustful of everybody going forward. What I realized though is that when you buy information products and things that teach you like about marketing, that it's not really like a relationship. With a relationship, you have to find one good one, and you can only have one, so it's got to be good. What I realized though with these kind of products is I bought hundreds and hundreds of these kind of products, and probably I wouldn't say they're scams. I've very rarely been actually like scam where they didn't deliver any product, but maybe like 80% of them I didn't get very much value out of. But even if 4 out of 5 times you get like so-called like scammed or like you don't get that much value out of it, the 1 out of 5 will more than make up for all the rest. So I would encourage people to think about it like that. Just think about like maybe not every product I buy is going to work out, but I'm not going to get scammed. Like they're going to deliver me something, and even if 1 out of 5 works out, then it's a worthwhile investment. And just so the guy who said that doesn't think I'm trying to scam him right now, I will just send you a book for free without even charging any shipping costs. So I'm not trying to scam you.
Yeah, and the thing is, and also he was like, yeah, is this guy even hiring? I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't he hire? Like he has this company where he's making more money. Like he obviously wants good talent. Like it's like it blows my mind that how many people out there think that it's still impossible to make money online. That that nothing works.
Man, that's so true. Like even something as simple as that, like paying $300 or $500 or whatever for an ad script. Like people don't believe like I could just type some words into my computer and get paid for it, even that small of an amount. And I think too, well, I'll tell you about the job ad I posted before this, Johnny. Yeah. So I posted in Justin Goff's copywriting group and a few other copywriting groups of like higher level copywriters. My original ad was I was offering a $200,000 a year salary and $100,000 a year in possible performance incentives. But what I required for that was that you needed to show me 3 ads that were unlisted, or basically 3 ads where all the views came from advertising, which had more than 1 million views. And I got 0 responses, literally 0 applications for that, which I was really shocked by. And I think that part of it was that there's just not that many YouTube copywriters out there with 1 million views on 3 ads. But I think another part of that was, now that you're saying this, a lot of people probably thought it was a scam. They probably thought like, oh, that's not even possible. Like $200,000 a year? Like nobody makes that kind of money from writing words, but many people do.
Yeah. And it's a really crazy mentality out there where it's funny because from someone who's already successful or knows that $600 is peanuts because that can turn into $6,000 or $60,000 or $600,000, to you, you're like, yeah, this is like $600 is like nothing to pay for a good script. While from someone who is on the opposite kind of that scarcity mentality, they're thinking, that is so much money. Who's going to ever pay me that? This must be a scam.
Exactly. And man, that mentality, that might be the most valuable thing that people can take from this podcast. Like if you can spend money and make more than you spent, you want to spend as much as you can. Like I remember, so this is one big thing for me back in the day. So, what was it, like 2015, 2016? I met John Benson, one of the top copywriters in the industry back at that time, one of the top copywriters in fitness. Now he's just one of the top copywriters, period. But I remember we started working with him, and he wrote a great sales video for us. But I can't remember exactly what he charged. It might have been $50,000 or $60,000. It was a huge amount of money for basically 30 pages of text. We paid him this huge amount of money. Man, and that really, it was difficult for me back at the time. It was a lot easier because many people I knew paid him that kind of money, and they're like, oh, it was worth it. Like 5 or 6 people I trusted said it was worth it. But to pay that much money for like a Word document, it really stretched my pleats. But it was so worth it because it beat our control, I believe, by about 20%. So basically, we're buying the same amount of advertising. And for let's say we spend $1 million on advertising, and we were making about $1.2 million before. Now we're making 20% more. So now we're making, say, like 1.4 or 1.5 million. Not just 20% more, well, 20% more revenue, but doubling our profits essentially. So it was definitely worth it to hire a premium copywriter like that. And there are a lot of, I mean, there's not a lot of guys like John Benson, but there's a lot of highly paid copywriters just making 10 grand or 20 grand or 30 grand just for writing sales video scripts. And yeah, definitely people can do it.
Yeah, I remember that the first time I heard that 10 grand figure for and this was before video. This was like a sales page, like, you know, I'm sure you remember this, but a lot of people who are a little bit older, they remember like this original sales pages were like blank white background with like big red bold like headline, like, you know, and it was just like a long page. You just scroll forever. You scroll for like, you know, 5 or 10 pages. And these copywriters would charge $10,000 to write this out. And it was just a freaking Word document.
Yeah, man. Well, a couple different lessons from that. If someone's interested in copywriting, that can be a great way to make money if you don't want to take on all the other responsibilities of the business. And if you're running a business and you're not interested in writing the copy, it's tough to shell out that kind of money for a Word document, but it can be one of the best investments you make. It's intangible. It's tough to like get yourself to do it the first time. But even if it doesn't work out every time, let's say you're spending $10,000 for a sales video or a sales letter. 1 out of 3 times it beats your control and you're making, say, 20% more revenue from the same amount of advertising spend. Like, even if like 9 out of 10 times it doesn't work out, you would still make more money from hiring those premium copywriters.
Yeah, so I think 2 big takeaways from that is, one is if you don't have a business but you're looking for something to get into, learn copywriting. It's one of the best skills out there, most sought after, most well paid. And if you listen to this podcast, your English is probably good enough to start writing. And it doesn't cost you anything. I mean, literally, you can write. I mean, this is one of the few businesses where you can make, you know, 10 grand a month or more writing on a freaking $200 Chromebook. Like, you don't you don't need any equipment. Go buy the cheapest Chromebook you can find and just start, you know, writing copy and, you know, just building yourself up. And obviously it has to be good. It obviously has to deliver results where people are going to stop hiring you. And obviously you can't charge 10 grand a script in the beginning, but start charging $200 or, you know, whatever it is. And if it converts, charge 600, and then it converts, charge more. Because, like, I'm sure, like, for example, you know, if you hired someone and you know, right now you're paying, how much you're paying per script?
So right now I'm taking a little bit of a different approach where I believe I was offering $300 per script, and then I'm training basically a larger number of lower price copywriters. Okay,
so yeah, and this is like an entry level, and to someone who's like, you know what, I'm sitting here in Sri Lanka, I'm sitting in Thailand, I got a 10-year-old computer that can't video edit, it can't do anything big, but I can open up Google Sheets or Google Docs or something. They can make $300 for probably not that much. It's not going to take them more than an hour of work to write this script out, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, once you know the skills, because basically once you know what you're doing, guys can bang these scripts out in a few hours, just 10 grand, 15 grand, just like that. But to be fair, it took them a few years of study and practice to learn the skills. And once you've done that, though, it can be quick money.
Yeah, 100%. So read Dan's book. Read Words That Sell. Read any of these kind of old copywriting books. Start creating the scripts. Be happy at $300 per script in the beginning and test yourself out. And then if you're good, if it starts converting, I'm sure Dan will give you a pay bump, right? Like if these ads start crushing it, people start making money, and they're like, hey Dan, I need more than $300. What are you gonna say?
Of course. I mean, I got the same mentality as you, Johnny. Like, if I'm spending money and it's making me more money, I want to spend as much as I can. I mean, I've worked with people before. We've had sales agents before, just people who are calling on the phone. They never really made serious money in their life. They barely knew how to write or like have English grammar. But within a few months, because they knew how to sell, they were making more than $100,000 a year in salary. So, I mean, yeah, it definitely can be done. I know it's tough to believe if you've never seen anybody that's done it, but many people have done it.
Yeah, and this is one of the few things that like literally has zero startup cost, or like the price of a book, right? Go on Amazon, go on Dan's site, buy one of these books, spend $15 or whatever. Bring out your typewriter or whatever you have laying around at home, and it just give it a shot. I mean, I really believe that for the majority of people listening to this who don't have a business yet or don't have something that you love, and you're looking to create a new way to earn money online that can potentially earn you 6 figures, maybe even I'm sure if you meet the right person, this $200,000 a year job with the incentive bonus still qualifies. So if someone can get to that level, like you will happily hire them, and not just you. I'm sure there's other people out there in the world who would fight for them.
Exactly, and when you do a job like that, one thing I've learned is that if you were to land a job writing copy for these top tier companies, that $200 grand or $300 grand or whatever you're making, that's only going to be the beginning. One thing that I've learned about the business model, now running this ad agency, I've gotten the ability to look at maybe 20 or 30 different high-level Google Ads accounts. And when you're working with high-level companies like this, you learn so much. With Sixpack, I was only looking at my own account, so the pace of learning was not as fast. But looking at what other great business owners are doing, you learn so much. And that learning is probably more valuable even than the money you're making. If you're writing copy for these businesses, they're going to be giving you feedback on the copy. They know what works and what doesn't. And you'll improve your skills so fast. And if you one day decide to start your own offer or start your own e-commerce store, that experience is going to benefit you so much.
100%. I definitely agree. So if people want to check out your agency, get your book, kind of find out more, maybe even apply for this job, how can they reach out?
So if you want to check out the book, go to 15stepsbook.com. You can get a copy of the book for free, just have to cover shipping, and then you can kind of learn the basics of my method. For anybody that's interested in coaching or ad management, go to socialresponsemarketing.com. It's got all the details of the coaching programs and how you can qualify for ad management. So if you're interested in working with me personally, that's the place to go.
Okay, sounds good. Dan, it's super fun catching up. Thanks for being so open and transparent about this whole process. I mean, it's hard to get, I think a lot of people don't have access to someone as successful as you who's made a multi-million-dollar exit or done, $20 million a year in revenue. It's really, I'm very blessed to have met friends like you and have kept in touch, as well as be able to share, this with all my audience. So I really appreciate you and all you listeners as well. If you guys haven't left a review of the podcast, go on iTunes. Please, review this so more people can find it. Share it with a friend. Screenshot it, just however you want. Get it out there because, the info that you've gotten in this episode alone, I promise you, is worth thousands of dollars. And if anything, it can end up saving you tons of time, tons of money, make you lots of money. And, you got to go out and take action.
Yeah, man, and thank you for doing this podcast. This is such a great resource you put together with all these experts. And with me personally, I listen to your Invest Like a Boss podcast. I would never have access to those kind of investing experts, so thank you for that podcast as well.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, guys, check out that podcast as well at investlikeaboss.com. Dan, super fun to catch up, and all of you guys, see you all next week. Wow, that was so fun to catch up with Dan again after all this time, after all these years, probably over 10 years now that we haven't spoken to each other. So I'm really grateful for this platform, this podcast, to be able to share my network of people who have all learned and grown into, very successful people in their own right. And Dan is probably one of the most successful internet marketers that I've met, and I'm so happy to be able to share that with you. I would still love to know the exact amount he sold the business for, but I'm assuming it was more than $10 million. So I would guesstimate anywhere between $10 and $100 million. So really, really cool that he came on the podcast, shared all that knowledge. And for all of you listening, I hope you got so much out of this. If you did, please do me a favor and leave a review on the iTunes store or wherever you hang out. Just share it on your Facebook wall, on your Instagram, on a story. If I make a TikTok of it, whatever you want to do, just get this into more people's ears because they can benefit from it. Especially if they want to, start an online business or grow either their YouTube presence, their marketing presence, or skills as an internet entrepreneur. So this week, I want to acknowledge and give a shout out to Ali B84, who says 5 stars. Thanks, Johnny. Hi, Johnny. I loved episode 249 about the RV life. So much good info. As someone who bought an RV because it was more cost effective than a 500 square foot apartment in the Bay Area, which is San Francisco, California, and now has since moved to Oregon, this episode really makes me want to pull my RV out of storage and buy a truck. I will just park my fifth wheel so I can hit the road. Thanks for always reigniting the nomad flame inside of me when I start to worry and question why I'm fighting for a better way. Keep up the good stuff coming. Keep all the good stuff coming. Allison, thank you so much. Appreciate that. And all of you who share the podcast, who review it on the clunky iTunes app, I really do appreciate it. We're right around 200 5-star reviews in the US store, and we would love for that to get over 200, as well as to get some reviews in other countries as well. So if you can hop on iTunes, do me that favor. If you can't go on iTunes, share or review somewhere else. Thanks so much, and hopefully everyone is doing well, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Travel Like a Boss podcast. If you want to hear more, including the bonus How to Choose the Perfect Niche episode, join our mailing list at travellikeabosspodcast.com. See you next week, and remember, if you want to travel like a boss, you need to be your own boss. So start your online business today and start living the lifestyle you've always dreamed of.